The Crystal Charter, Daughter of the Red Seal. Chapter 31. Maebe awoke from a fretful sleep. She had dreamt of the huge crystal, of blood dripping down its smooth surface, reflecting her face back at her. When she wiped the blood away with a leather rag, it streaked down her pale silk dress, a red stain spreading out along the fine fabric. And when she looked up to clean the crystal some more, Certainty's face stared back at her from within. No smile, blood smeared across her features and clothes. No smile. She looked like death. Maebe opened her eyes to the chill of night camped in the wastes of Sumine, stars hanging overhead showing the month of the Sphinx. Neva was stretched out on a blanket beside her, wrapped in warm sheets and a lizard skin. Maebe traced her fingers over the motifs of constellations depicted on the edge of Certainty's cloak that she had been using for a blanket. They had set out from Neva's hidden camp west of the canyon 3 days prior. Neva's father had yanked on Maebe's nose, setting it straight, after the wild girl apologized for breaking it. She had claimed it was Maebe's own fault for not going down with her first strike. They had given her a vile potion, which sped up her healing, including making the scabs form and fall off her back and face at an alarming rate. 2 silk wings, giant waste lizards, were coiled around them, sharing their stored heat and protecting the women riding them across the waste from other night creatures. Neva's family had bred them in their old lives. Their spines flowed side to side as they ran, skittering across the flat rocky landscape with surprising agility. They would gather up speed and then glide across the ground with flaps of skin between their front and back legs, barely connecting to the earth once they reached their maximum pace. They were so different to the pack beasts that had accompanied Maebe into the gorge. They were bigger and slimmer and longer. 2 bulbous eyes of metallic shades sat atop discoidal heads which would swivel around, taking in the surroundings through instinct, not intelligence. Maebe's silkwing was called Ashern. He had a yellow stripe along his bronzed body, darker tips on his rounded toes and nose. Maebe knew she wouldn't be going back to sleep, but from the narrow strip of light creeping along the horizon, she realized they would have been waking up soon to leave anyway. Neva had loaned her a set of light leathers for riding, a dark red tunic with wide leather buckles up the middle, and a black scarf to wrap around her head and face that billowed behind her as they ran. The flaps of leather over her knees, shins and forearms were protection in case her silkwing threw her off. The layers were stitched to allow a breeze to form a tunnel onto her skin when they were travelling fast in the hot wastes. "You don't sleep so well, do you?" mumbled Neva from her bundle of blankets. "It's nearly dawn. Get up," Maebe replied in Grenian. Neva rolled over, pulling the gliding flap of her silkwing tighter. The huge lizard lifted its scaled legs, expecting a stomach scratch. "Curse balls! Every trained fighter I've ever met has been just as lazy," Maebe groaned at her. "Shh!" Neva sat up, scowling at Maebe through tangles of loose hair. Her silkwing, fire dust, stood at the disturbance and readjusted into a better position. "Don't call for the god of death in the wastes." "Oh, no, you're not superstitious, are you?" Maebe asked, fastening her leg leathers on with unimpressed incredulity. "No, not superstitious. Just it's better not to mess with things you can't understand," she argued. "So, what do you say if not—" She mouthed the insult at Neva again, causing her to scowl further. "If you must know, we say Cain's cock," Neva informed her. "Cain's cock? That's no better," Maebe objected. "It is an insult,"
It is supposed to sound insulting, but Kerr isn't the god of these lands, so we don't summon him.
Never snarled, rolling her eyes. Only idiots summon death on themselves. She gave up on going back to sleep and began to put her riding leathers on. Maebe fished dried bread rolls from her borrowed pack and started to pick up breakfast.
Kerr isn't the god of the Green Kingdom either, Maebe retorted.
She had started to like Never. She was angry with the world, and Maebe felt a kindred rage flickering inside her. She had also dedicated the last 2 years of her life to rescuing people from the gorge. They had saved everyone alive from the night they took Maebe. Never was a person who was fighting to make things right.
Death blesses humans with short lives. The Green Kingdom is the kingdom belonging to humans, and therefore death,
Never informed her with religious wisdom.
Nonsense. I know the stories of the lands. Cain gave fire to Nemain to forge strength in the heat of the Red Land.
Very true, smiled Never. She was proud of her home. Every child in Nemain used a weapon at some point. It was common for learning skills with blades and bows to be favoured over reading and writing. Never had whispered stories of her childhood to Maebe in the night, of how she loved the bow and excelled in target practice. Her brother preferred the sword, like their father, so they chased each other with sticks even outside of the training ring.
Okay, Cain, fire.
Kappa blessed the sand dragons with a river when Cain's fire blew east and dried their lands into a desert. And Artio gifted witches who fled to the eastern coast with a forest rich with bounty. There the refugees of Cain's heat grew strong in.
They grew strong in nothing because they fled like cowards,
claimed Never, over her last mouthful of crunchy bread, a skewer of some unnamed lizard jerky in her other hand.
You ever been there?
Maebe asked Never's scowl before continuing.
In the north, Oreed raised mountains from the ground so that he could reach his love who had hidden amongst the stars.
My home sounds much more romantic, Maebe cooed at Never, who had raised a haughty eyebrow at her.
But Green Kingdom, she started, is part of Oreed's empire of the mountains, Maebe filled in. That is not true, though. Humans tried to tear Oreed apart, leaving the curse of death scarred into the land using magic. So feel free to petition your god in your kingdom, but please do not mention him in the wastes.
Never folded the last of her blankets and strapped them to Ashen and fire dust. Point taken, although I haven't heard that part of the verses before, Maebe said, brushing the crumbs off her clothes from breakfast and offering most of her dried roll to Ashen, his long tongue wrapped around Maebe's hand and wrist, coming away leaving nothing in her palm.
Of course you haven't, but it is the reason the humans of Nemain choose to stay here, and why I will always come back to Nemain. Only stupid or weak humans seek death in the name of safety.
That just doesn't make sense,
Maebe replied. You were too weak to defend yourself from me at Sachem Gorge.
Never mounted Fidus' narrow saddle with a swift hop of her leg over the flat lizard and waited for Maebe to do the same thing. A thin layer of glass padded with leather sat over Never's eyes, making her look like one of the Silkwings. Without witches to ward away the inland sandstorms, they had to protect their eyes with goggles large enough to see through.
Okay, so give me my blades back. Teach me, Maebe demanded.
Never had kept her daggers, leaving Maebe unarmed for the journey. Just because Maebe had agreed to go north with her, she didn't trust her enough to let her carry a weapon.
Now you think I'm stupid enough to give you your blades back, or you want to prove you aren't weak. Either way, I think you are too stupid to learn.
With her last comment, Never grinned wickedly at Maebe, and set off on fire dust, heading north with the sun cresting over the horizon to her right. Cain's cock, Maebe hissed as she hopped onto Ashen and set off behind her. Too long had she shut herself away, hiding from the world, when she should be setting it ablaze, to destroy all trace of wrongs done in her name. Riding through blistering days with Never, she could wear the mask of that new person. They slowed the silk wings down with the fading of light. For the entire day they hadn't spotted one of the many inland villages for Never to go and top up their supplies. Maebe was staying away from towns and keeping her hair wrapped in the southern style. A dip in the gradual incline of the earth let them be hidden from the horizon. They had to remain vigilant against warlocks until they reached Fumo Forest. "It's easy if you know how," claimed Never, with an arrogant smirk. "Stay west of the gorge, travel fast and keep any camp hidden. Waste drakes are nocturnal, so warlocks won't even travel at night." Maebe pulled up beside Never, wiping the dust from her goggles, using the corner of her scarf, and yawning underneath. "Here's a proposal. Teach me to fight like you, and I will be so tired that I'll sleep through the night," Maebe offered as Never finished wiping her own face. "So, my student is showing a grain of wisdom after all," Never grinned at Maebe. "Student?" Maebe asked. "You can have your blades back if you land a single blow on me," Never laughed, hopping from Fire Dust Black, and squirting a skinful of water into the creature's mouth. His head tilted side to side with enjoyment as his strange eyes swiveled in different directions. Maebe slipped out of Ashian's saddle and threw a swift fist to the back of Never's head. Somehow the dark-haired girl caught her hand and twisted, causing Maebe to drop to her knees or let the bones in her arm snap. Never sneered down at her and twisted a little more, until Maebe cried out. "Please, you didn't think it would be that easy." Never let out a delighted laugh and let her go. Before Maebe knew what she was doing, she chuckled too. Just a small sound that escaped her lips. The last time she heard such a noise was with Mouse in Clest, in a world that seemed cleaner than the one she sat in. The word traitor flared in her brain along with the smile, but as long as happiness was paid for with her own pain, she knew she would smile. She kneeled in the dirt, an ache heating her shoulder and elbow, laughing with the girl who put her there. "Let's settle the silk wings, then we can do a little hand-to-hand before it's too dark," invited Never. "Just because I want to keep hold of your knives doesn't mean I don't want to sleep until dawn tomorrow."